Electrocast.
All new drinks are now at McDonald's. With refreshers like the Strawberry Watermelon Refresher and the Mango Pineapple Refresher with popping boba. To crafted sodas like the Sprite Berry Blast with berry flavors and cold foam. Who knew ice cold drinks could be so fire? Try them all now at McDonald's.
Refreshers contain caffeine. Copyright 2026, The Coca-Cola Company. Sprite is a registered trademark of The Coca-Cola Company.
Ready to soundtrack your summer? With Red Bull Summer All Day Play, you choose a playlist that fits your summer vibe the best. Are you a festival fanatic, a deep end DJ, a road dog, or a trail mixer? Just add a song to your chosen playlist and put your summer on track. Red Bull Summer All Day Play. Red Bull gives you wings. Visit redbull.com/brightsummer ahead to learn more. See you this summer.
Hold on to your butts.
We are changing the course of history as we see it. That is what Wesley demands.
Now this affects Iris. Iris, where are you?
What you feel only matters to you. I do not entertain hypotheticals. The world as it is vexing enough.
Iris, I have a tip for you.
Don't take drugs!
Or Whatever Movies with Wesley and Iris.
What up and welcome to Or Whatever Movies. I'm your co-host Iris and I'm here with my older brother,
Wesley.
Today we're talking a movie from 1981, On Golden Pond. On Golden Pond.
And Iris again, we're going back in time. What is the plot of On Golden Pond?
I think at the end somebody dies on a lake.
Someone dies on Golden Pond?
Yes. Somebody dies on the water in a boat.
Why were they on the boat?
Something drove them there, and the boat was their thinking place.
Their thinking. They go out there to reflect?
Yes.
And let the sunlight reflect on them, making it a golden pond?
Yes.
All right. Go out to think, go out to die. On Golden Pond. So I worked on a show starting early in my career on reality TV, and the contestants or the participants had health issues. And after a week or so, I started to feel like sympathy pains or similar symptoms. I don't know if sympathy is the right word, but it was like by association. So I saw On Golden Pond. Kelly and I watched it, and I've been trying to get you to talk about it for a week and a half, and I feel old and weak and bitter, and it's sunset, and there's family strife, and I wonder if you're dead, and we're like estranged or whatever. What took you so long to watch On Golden Pond?
I'll tell you exactly what took me so long. Solo parenting and On Golden Pond itself, which is interminable.
It's not that long a movie.
At an hour and 559 minutes. On Golden Pond is just a string out of different scenes that make you depressed in different ways. I can see why you'd feel like you live on Golden Pond, because it makes you feel like you're in an eternal sunset, because these people are in their eternal sunset. And then they have these young people running around reminding them of how close they are to kicking the bucket.
Young people? Dabney Coleman is your age in this movie.
The dentist?
Bill, yeah. Bill Sr.
Don't think that was lost on me. My age for the next 2 months that I get to hold over Brian, where I'm a solid 2 years younger than him.
Man.
But, 45 is a good age where you know enough about who you are and about how much crap you're willing to take from people.
Yeah, he makes that clear. Dabney Coleman had always been like a bumbling moron in my mind. He was in Drexel's Class, the sitcom, and he was in 9 to 5. And so when he showed up and he's kind of doofy looking and hairy in all the wrong places, and Henry Fonda kind of lays into him, I'm like, oh, this is going to go well because he's like a foil. He's exactly what Henry Fonda needs to feel like he's sharp and on top of it and can point out all the flaws of the estranged daughter's boyfriend. And then he busts him down. He's like, all right, I see what you're doing, and I'm only going to take so much, though.
So in that way, they kind of ended up equals?
in a way, at least they matched on a level between the generations or whatever. And it wasn't like, I will tolerate your doddering old dad or whatever. But he defers to him. He's like, well, he asserts himself because he's a grown man. But he is like, hey, I want to bone your daughter under your roof. That's cool, right? And he's like, what? And he plays it off or whatever. They're very consciously playing this game and know what the other is trying to do and is like kind of stringing it out, or at least Henry Fonda is.
When homie comes to the family retreat, you don't say, can I sleep with your daughter? Is that just 1981 parlance, or is that really awkward?
Well, what
don't
do
you
mean?
say, hey, we'd like to stay in the same room because of blank blank and these very justifiable reasons? He just says, I want to sleep with Chelsea. And you're like, what?
Is it to be assumed? Okay, putting ourselves back in 1980 or 1981, do you show up when you're fully grown and your girlfriend is fully grown and just assume you can shack up?
I don't know. I mean, I assume if it's a 3-bedroom cabin that maybe it's reasonable to say, hey, Chelsea and I would like to share a room. I think we'll all be the most comfortable that way. But when Brian first took me home to Ohio, I wasn't like, hey, can I sleep with your son?
Wow.
But I don't think he even asked. And I certainly didn't, because that's just weird.
So you know that On Golden Pond was a play, a stage play, right?
I did not know that.
It very much felt like a play, don't you think? When they showed up and she's like, Norman, we're back. We're home and the loons are waiting for us. It's magnificent strawberries and stuff. And, you know, and I was like, oh, it feels like a play. So it totally makes sense. But it felt like a matter of convenience. They're all in this cabin together. And you can show up and just assume, I suppose, that you're going to share a room even though you're not married. But you can also show up after you've been estranged for who knows how long as a grown woman and assume you can drop your boyfriend's kid off with your parents for the summer. Like, I was like, this is where the tension lies. If she's going to stoke up old resentments and old embers of discord, it's going to be by assuming, hey, dad, who I haven't talked to, or like going through, I'm going to ask mom and not even bother. Just, hey, can we drop off Billy and peace out for a European vacation? I was aghast because I wouldn't have assumed. And I also would not have assumed that we could stay together. If there was any question, I would have gotten accommodations elsewhere in town.
Yeah.
What was going to be the plan if the Thayers refused to take on Billy for, 2 months?
This was confusing to me too, because doesn't dad in like the previous scene say, I'm going to turn it around, or I'm going to make Billy's life less complicated? You know, him going between his mom and me. Like, something that he said suggested that he wanted more stability in Billy's life. And then he pieces out for a month. I was like, wait a second. I don't think bringing stability to Billy's life means what you think it means. So I was confused on that side too. Why wasn't he just with his mom?
I don't know, but all of that to say that it was a matter of convenience by having everybody in the same place, and then to get rid of the young characters so we can focus on the real. This is not just generational separation, but across multiple generations. Like, this is ostensibly a grandson, and as estranged and unfamiliar to the Thayers as the daughter was to her dad. Like, they were doing their own thing and avoided direct conversation and emotional engagement and things like that. So it was just, I think that Billy was meant to represent a generic test piece, like a control piece. You know what I mean? It was like
surrogate.
Yeah, like a stand-in. But it was him managing his relationship with a young person when he's totally set in his ways and has been going to Golden Pond for the summers for 47 years. And then all of a sudden this wrench gets thrown into the works. You know, the kid is difficult and he's like, this is stupid. And he doesn't want to do the stuff and thinks it's lame to go fishing. And then they have to kind of work it out so that he can get to a place where the daughter can ease into that newly softened kind of space that he has created to accommodate Billy.
So Billy is like a primer?
That's what I'm saying.
For old Norman, and therefore kind of a conduit to their connection?
I think so.
Connecting Norman and Chelsea?
And it's a little bit awkward, but they needed Chelsea to be adult enough so that she could fight back while also having the character, her stand-in in Billy, be pliable enough that he would come to love fishing and Treasure Island and hanging out with the old folks.
Yeah, he's all like hands in the armpits, cruising chicks bullshit. And then he's like so excitable and he's like, we caught Walter. I'm going to go tell Ethel. Like, it's pretty cute, the kid's evolution. But I didn't really think about it in terms of how he changes the dynamic between Henry Fonda and Jane Fonda. Speaking of Henry, Jane, and Bridget, any relation?
Yes. Bridget being the daughter of Peter Fonda, who's the brother of Jane Fonda and the son of Henry Fonda, who was going to be in this movie. But they couldn't find a role for him because it would have been weird for Peter to play Bill, Jane Fonda's husband or boyfriend. So Peter sat it out.
Wow.
So I thought this won Best Picture. It did not. It won Best Golden Globe, but the Golden Globes don't mean anything for drama or whatever. But I thought this was a damn near sweeper, which was incredible to me, given how kind of slow and old people-ish this movie, like senior citizens would love On Golden Pond, right?
Would they?
I think so. So let's get to that in a second. But it was nominated for Best Picture. However, it didn't win. But there's a considerable achievement in On Golden Pond 1981 for the awards, winning Best Actor for Henry Fonda, Best Actress for Katharine Hepburn, and Best Adapted Screenplay.
Huge.
Do you know that On Golden Pond was the second highest grossing picture of 1981?
Wow.
Beaten only by the legendary Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Oh, what a good year. And what two totally different movies.
Yeah, to be 1 and 2. And so I was like, I remember this movie fondly, even though I hadn't seen it for a long time and frankly didn't remember much about it at all.
Fondly.
And so a thing I want to touch on is the kind of why of you sort of slogging through this because you're a young, hip chick or whatever.
Wow. Nothing ever made you sound older.
And there's room for the dreaded why. And I wonder if that's a generational thing, why this movie avoids the question of why On Golden Pond? Why are we watching it? So was it more existential or was it more like, why are we young, hip podcasters focusing on Golden Pond?
The dreaded why. It is the death knell for a movie. If you come out of it asking yourself, just why? Like, why On Golden Pond? And a recent example of that was Marty Supreme, which I was so jazzed about seeing in the theater with a whole bunch of people who were equally jazzed about it. And there were like influencers in the audience and people were like, oh my God, that's Tyler, the creator and stuff. And I was like, And it was so infectious. But then afterward, I found myself just asking just kind of why? Like, why Marty Supreme, which isn't a good sign. The funny thing about On Golden Pond is that the movie itself is asking the dreaded why. The biggest, like, capital D, capital W dreaded why. Why life? Like, why is he still around? What is his purpose to live? Is it just in anticipation of his death? Like, it's an existential movie that I think in a weird way answers the little w dreaded why question. Because isn't this what life and movies are all about?
Wow, that's deep. I think you got it. Maybe you're old enough that you can relate to On Golden Pond because nothing shows what a hip young chick you are like the fact that you keep saying jazzed all the time. Is it? That's kind of what I want to get to. Is On Golden Pond for the seniors, for people of the Thayer's age, to feel young and invigorated, like they have a real impression on younger generations, that the wisdom that they've cultivated over decades and you know what, it seems like, oh, that's where they go to die is On Golden Pond. But no, he knows about fishing and he knows about Walter and all this stuff about life and about embracing stuff that's unfamiliar that he can impart to Billy. That's what the Thayers have to offer to Bill, to Billy, to Margaret. What's her name?
Chelsea.
Yeah. it displays the relevance tucked on the shores of Golden Pond or whatever that is not just, those old people, they get lost and can't stoop to pick strawberries or whatever. Like, they have something to contribute. And I'm wondering if you, at your tender young age, understood that, or is it just like, oh, you're like Billy, like, why do I have to hang out with the old people like for a week and a half like I did?
I do sense that the eve of 50 is a particularly relevant time to watch On Golden Pond because you're definitely like existentially in your midlife crisis phase, but you're still young enough to be like, oh, 80, that's 30 years. Wait, how many years away? Yeah, 30 years away.
Jesus.
Like, no big deal or whatever. And what I do know is that at 80, I want to be boating and climbing onto the prow or the stern of a boat and picking strawberries and all spry. These 80-year-olds are doing just fine despite his angioma or whatever he's got going on in the heart. I think the real question is, what kind of an old person are you? Are you someone who has come to terms with and has a sense of peace about the cycle of life, the inevitability of death? Or are you an old person that doesn't particularly want to think about it? Because I know both. I know examples of both in my life. And I would think that for those who would rather not think about it, who avoid doing wills and trusts and don't want to talk about healthcare directives or how you want your remains to be handled, like those people probably would have a really hard time with On Golden Pond. Has Mom watched this?
Yeah, she knows all about it.
But has she seen it recently? I'd be curious to know her perspective.
I talked to her about it. I don't think she has chosen to rewatch it because she's kind of on the other side of it, don't take him now. Just a little while longer, God. Oh my God,
Do you think that Katharine Hepburn's warble is affected?
I don't think so. And so On Golden Pond now exists in parodies. Like Jim Carrey did a one-man version of this, like on a talk show where he puts on Norman's hat and does that Fonda face and sticks his neck out all far. And he's like, bullshit. You like to say that word, don't you? And then he would do the warble. So I watched her very closely because, to be perfectly honest, this is the only Katharine Hepburn role I can bring to mind. Other than that, I have Kate Blanchett as Katharine Hepburn in The Aviator.
The whole time, all I thought was of her little neckerchiefs and bow ties and Aviator. The Aviator.
But everyone does the impression. All the behind the scenes stuff, all the interviews, Jane Fonda talked about how Katharine Hepburn, because we'll get to Jane Fonda and Henry Fonda, the real discord between them and how this mirrors their actual relationship. But she's having a hard time on set, and she talks about Katharine Hepburn coming up to her and whispering, he doesn't know how much he hurts you. Spencer Tracy was the same way. And she does the impression, and everyone does the impression. So I watched Katharine Hepburn very closely. It's not all the time. Obviously it's an exaggeration when you do the impression, but she was also physically moving as though palsied a lot of the time. So I don't think it was an affectation, but I'm not 100% sure. But it is so noticeable. It's like a defining characteristic. That said, if it was affected, it was enough that it stood out and caught the attention of Academy voters. And I did not think watching this, wow, this is the performance of a lifetime for either of them. And Jane Fonda was nominated too, but I didn't really see it. How On Golden Pond caught fire with the public and was second only to Raiders of the Lost Ark, and how Henry Fonda and Katharine Hepburn both won their Oscars for this role. Do you see it?
Is it an epic on a small scale? The whole time I was so aware of how insulated this movie is. It's really just about family dynamics in this isolated location. And in that sense, it hit kind of close to home because I feel like my world's kind of small right now. And family dynamics are pretty important because in large part, my family, both immediate and somewhat extended, are kind of like the center of my world right now. And so in that way, I really related to On Golden Pond. And it doesn't need to have scope and scale in order to be an epic emotionally. So I'm surprised to hear myself saying this because I think it was grand in its own way, but not on a Raiders of the Lost Ark kind of level.
What you're saying, kind of small, contained, about family drama, about her reading a book, but not really because she's glancing over because she's outside of the Parcheesi festival that's going on, kind of made for the stage. It seemed perfect. The only challenge, I suppose, would be putting them on the water in a believable way. Apparently, loons are pretty elusive, but all you need is that trilling call, right? The loon call, and you're back on Golden Pond. That's what Jim Carrey did. He got up and put on his hat or whatever and prepared his character, and the lights go down and it's warm amber light and you hear the loons and you're like, I'm there, because it's exactly the same thing. But yeah, definitely a small, contained family drama. You wouldn't even see, like, the only outside character in this movie is the mailman guy, who she was awfully all up on, the old mailman crush or whatever, or the guy who obviously and I was like, that's kind of inappropriate or whatever. And I didn't feel, it was weird to feel protective over her and put myself in Dabney Coleman's shoes, but like, he didn't want to go skinny dipping or whatever. And I was like, I feel that, Bill. I feel you, dog. And it was really weird when the mom and the daughter went skinny dipping.
That was a little weird. I thought that Bill Sr. was afraid of the bears or like wildlife.
He was, but that was kind of his bumbling city boy persona they were trying to play up. He doesn't belong here. He's an other, and he's a city dude. He doesn't understand our ways on Golden Pond. It made him an outsider, but really it was just the uncertainty of his surroundings. Because he was a pretty self-possessed, fairly rational dude who just played doofy, I guess, to make Norman feel better about himself, or for us to feel better about Norman.
And also maybe following a little bit of Chelsea's cue of reverting to a more childlike persona when she's at Golden Pond. Because she was saying herself, or she was even deriding herself, or like, why? What did she say? Like, I own Los Angeles, but when I'm here, when I'm back at Golden Pond, I'm this little resentful, spiteful child.
Yep. But Norman, I don't think, was intimidating. He was just sort of impenetrable. His lips would get really thin, and he'd just kind of watch you to see what you would do, but he wasn't offering anything. Okay, the fat comment was hurtful, and that was kind of strange, because I've seen some fat people, and Jane Fonda's not one of them. So
yeah, no.
It almost invalidated his entire argument to suggest she was fat. Like, that was so obviously an incorrect comment. I was like, your argument has no basis.
But if it's so obviously not true, why is she so hurt by it?
Because I think that her dad was looking for jabs or whatever. And she's obviously the, like, get in a bikini right away and hug the mailboat guy and stuff. And just that was the thing he knew that would annoy her in one concise word that would piss her off or make her feel like a kid. And maybe she was a chubby kid. I don't know.
That certainly wasn't cool. But what hurt me most about On Golden Pond was their little tete-a-tete at the end, where he was like, what did she say? It was soul crushing. She was like, we don't really get along, or we can't communicate. And he was like, I just thought we didn't like each other.
Yeah. And that might have been true. From his perspective, I just don't like her and the way she lives her life or something. Because he wasn't striving for connection.
Ouch.
I'm telling you, when you get to Norman's age, all the pretense and stuff gets stripped away, and he's got no defenses up anymore and no filter.
Okay, but he straight up doesn't. I mean, Dad, like, wasn't the warmest or the most affectionate, but I never thought that he didn't like me. Did you think that Dad didn't like you?
Well, in thinking about that kind of stuff, I can't, like I said, not like you said, not the outwardly most affectionate or effusive in his praise or affection kind of guy. it's hard to say. And I can spot those things. For example, a quick one would be that Dad never let us down. There was nothing that we ever needed from Dad, aside from, emotional availability, that we were ever denied. One way or another, I got everything that I ever wanted or needed from our parents. And so that I can point to and be like, Dad was there. Like, he didn't want to go to Brazil and work for a year when 9/11 happened and the aerospace contracts dried up, but he did it. He worked crazy overtime for money. For what? Dad didn't spend money on anything. It was just so we could be provided for, so he could buy his crappy kid. And I was indeed a crappy kid. Multiple cars and video game systems. And I'd go to him and ask to borrow money, and he'd give me $40 or something. Obviously, I was never going to pay it back. Dad was there. But if you push the buttons, and I did a couple of times, you could see the defenses go up. I only hugged Dad one time in my entire memory as an adult, and he didn't hug me back. It's just not where Dad was. And I don't think that's where Norman was. And so this brings me to the why, I think, of On Golden Pond that I most want to get at. And that is whether or not people, and particularly critics, responded to this movie because of its situational awareness, because Jane Fonda and Henry Fonda were estranged, had almost an identical relationship to Norman and
Chelsea.
Indeed, Jane Fonda brought this movie to producers to get her dad to star, I think, as a way of reaching out and trying to mend a fractured relationship. That moment that you're talking about, when she reaches out and touches him, he has a noticeable flinch that wasn't scripted, that was on camera, that was real, that he kind of drew back and turned his face away, and you could see the exterior crack, and he had an emotional response that he didn't want to display on camera because he was in a place where they were having a fictional conversation, which leads to real emotional engagement, of course, between two actors. It's impossible not to. That was, in a way, forced because it was on the page, and he was expected to act that role. And when the character touches the other character as Henry Fonda, the dad, he was like, oh, this is a lot right now.
The critics responded the same way that critics 45 years later responded to sentimental value.
That's a great example. Check out our discussion at orwhatevermovies.com or wherever you get podcasts. But I do not like This Is a Good Movie because On Golden Pond puts on display the open wound of a fractured relationship between one of Hollywood's most established families at the time. Then Henry Fonda, who had been nominated so many times, had never won a competitive Oscar, wins for this role where he puts it all on the line to demonstrate his troubled relationship with his daughter. Jane Fonda's also nominated. Katharine Hepburn shows up to support, and she plays the mitigator in real life for their relationship on set. She wins an Oscar. And then it goes into edit, and Henry Fonda is very sick. And so the director shows him a cut of the movie. He was too sick to receive his Oscar. Jane Fonda gave a really long speech on her dad's behalf, because they had mended their relationship to an extent, and then took the Oscar over to his house, and then he passed away like a few months later.
No.
And you're like, oh, it mirrors their real life story. I don't care. I'm not supposed to care. And that's not why a movie's supposed to be nominated for Best Picture or people are supposed to win Oscars. And I don't like that On Golden Pond may have succeeded in some regards because it put on display a real-life drama between an acting family.
Well, you have the distance. You have the perspective. Do you think that On Golden Pond does not merit its accolades?
You said it was 700 months long and that you had to slog through it.
It has an unconventional or maybe a subtle structure that makes it feel like a sequence of events strung together. It didn't feel like it had a strong structure to me. When they think they're pulling up Walter and they pull up the loon, I was like, oh, the whiff of death. Now I know where we are in this movie. Now I know that this is the dark night of the soul, to use a Blake Snyderism. But I otherwise had no idea where we were in this movie, how much longer it was going to be, or where it was going. That being said, Are these segments emotionally poignant? Yes. Does this additional context that you bring to it, the historical context, deepen or enrich the poignancy? I could certainly see how it would back in 1981.
Your Back in Time contradicts that. You kind of knew exactly where this movie was going, except for the mistake in thinking that one of them was actually going to die on screen.
I mean, at the end, he pretty much does, right? At the end, aren't they in heaven?
I guess. It's probably a cheat where he collapses and she's like, "Oh my God, Norman!" And she like runs outside and prays to God and holds his head. And he's like, "Ethel, I think I'm okay now. I'm going to get up and we're going to go about our day. Pick some strawberries, shall we?"
He says it himself. He's like, "Maybe I'm dead." I was like, yep.
You don't get to be okay and just like collapse like that. And like, it was totally a cheat. And it was meant to like, they're still on Golden Pond. Did you know that the catfish that Walter was picked up from like a fishery or a local like farm or whatever? And then after filming was done, they dumped him in the lake and he probably still lives there.
Just haunting?
Yeah. He's in Squam Lake.
Squam Lake where?
In Holderness, New Hampshire.
Okay.
But I mean, they got out there and he is really old. They're both really old. But they were out there on the thing and they got turned over in the canoe in one early take because there was a speedboat on the lake. I think that it's kind of meant to mirror that speedboat scene that happens early on, you know. But it did. It dumped them into the water and people freaked out like he was Tom Cruise and dragged him out and wrapped him up in blankets and stuff because he was fragile. He and Billy, Henry Fonda and the kid, both had wetsuits on under their clothes, and they made the old dude cling to the rock. And Katharine Hepburn was so committed that she refused any assistance or a stunt double who was on hand and dressed in her clothes and was like, "I'm gonna do this dive, damn it," and dived into the water. I can't say dove because dove, while it is a word, is not proper in this context. She dived. But also that lake was like historically low levels at the time. Henry Fonda and the kid were knee deep in water and were lying flat on the surface, underneath the surface on the lake bed, and could have stood up and the water wouldn't have reached their knees when they were clinging to that rock for life.
I was thinking about that because in the stunt double takes a header.
When the guy goes flying off the boat. Great stunt.
Yes. He goes launching into like what looked like 3 feet deep water filled with giant boulders.
I'm just saying the part where they were clinging to the rock. I'm sure it was deeper where they filmed the stunt, but they weren't very deep. And so there weren't a lot of stakes in the filming of this movie, except for the fact that Henry Fonda was already old and frail.
Yeah.
But it's something that he was
That's
out there
wild.
and doing stuff. Like one of the critics called it the pinnacle of acting, that it was astounding what the two of them did. And I got to say, like 45 years on, I kind of didn't see it for the daring, risk-taking filmmaking that On Golden Pond purported to be. I didn't see it. So I wanted to know why people reacted to it, to see how you would react to it, and wonder if it's just like legacy accolades, like this is the Fondas. But unfortunately, On Golden Pond has to stand on its own merits.
So you obsessed over On Golden Pond and insisted that we watch it because it's only okay and doesn't really hold up to all the hype?
I wanted to know what you thought, and then it took you a week and a half to tell me what you thought. So then I began to focus and obsess about it.
And that's our discussion on Golden Pond. Or orwhatevermovies.com or wherever you get podcasts. 818-835-0473 is how you get in touch. Or orwhatevermovies@gmail.com. Thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed this movie favorite, so to speak.
A golden oldie.
Thanks for listening, and we'll see you in the afterlife.
Introducing the Deep Leadership Podcast. Leadership is a people business. That's the philosophy of your podcast host, John Rennie. As a former submarine officer who spent 22 years leading businesses in corporate America before starting his own manufacturing business, he knows that leadership matters. Deep Leadership is real-world, actionable leadership advice from John and his expert guests. Become a leader worth following. Subscribe today.
Electricast.
Go check out the Money Round on Electricast with yours truly, the Money Coach, giving you all the best knowledge in wrestling, college wrestling, international, freestyle, high school, having the top athletes in the game, the best coaches in the game, and also the best MMA guys across the world. Check us out on the Money Round. Great comedy, great insight, and great conversation. The Money out.
Electricast. Electricast.